University Student Chat. Tonight we'll be focusing on academics and research, but please feel free to ask about any questions you might have. My name is Connor Cotton. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I'm a junior majoring in civil and environmental engineering and minoring in cultural anthropology, so very wide range of studies. I'm joined tonight by Audrey. Audrey, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Audrey Duapia. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also a junior. I'm majoring in English and political science with a minor in Russian, and I'm currently studying abroad in France, so I'm Skyping from Paris right now.
So it looks like we might have to just talk between ourselves for a little bit before we get any questions. You can post your questions on the comment section of our Google Plus page, and we'll answer them during this chat. But before we get those questions, Audrey, why don't you tell me, how did you pick your classes, and how did you register for your classes that you're taking next semester, since we're just about to pick those classes?
A big part of that is having to, talk with I have two majors, so talking with both of my advisors and figuring out, what classes interest me, what classes can help fulfill some of my requirements. Luckily, I'm able to do a lot of things for my major while I'm abroad, so that makes things a lot more flexible for next semester. I'm trying to balance things that I'm interested in, just kind of out of personal interest, and then also I'm doing a thesis next semester, so that's like a big part of my scheduling as well. But mostly it came through talking with my advisor, my poli-sci advisor, my English advisor, my thesis advisor, and figuring it out with them.
Great. So you said you have requirements. So do you ever? So just for people who haven't, who don't exactly know what those requirements might refer to.
Right. So there's kind of our distribution requirements, just in terms of topics, like in terms of natural sciences, quantitative skills, your arts and your letters, those types of things. And then there's also kind of different, our areas of knowledge. But those are really flexible. And so one thing I really liked when I was applying to colleges was that you never really feel boxed in by the requirements at Duke. That there's plenty of things that fall within my interest category that could count for quantitative skills or natural sciences or arts and letters, and so it really is kind of up to you to really design your curriculum the way you want it to, and that's what I was looking for in a school where they didn't necessarily tell you exactly what class you have to take, but you can kind of choose by your interests, but then still get the breadth of curriculum.
Yeah, that's something that I really liked. When I came here as a freshman, I really didn't know what I wanted to study, and I ended up being able to take classes in the religion department, in the history department, economics, computer science, and then ended up switching completely out of Trinity and into Pratt. But all of those classes ended up fulfilling requirements that I would have needed to take anyways, but I feel like they all ended up serving some purpose eventually. It looks like we do actually have a question from, I think it's Taryn. He or she, I'm sorry, I can't tell from the name, asked, how much time do you spend studying and doing classwork? Do you have ample time to pursue outside academic interests? So Audrey, do you want to take that question first? Then,
yeah,
as
sure.
a Trinity student, and then I can take it from a Pratt perspective, because people might be concerned that engineers or non-engineers might have a different perspective on those things.
Yeah, well, it really does kind of vary based on, so last semester, I normally overload, and an overload at Duke is 5 classes instead of 4, and so it's definitely about time management. I spend I commit several hours a day to my schoolwork, obviously, but I never feel like there's no room in my life at Duke to spend time with my friends or to pursue other academic interests. I have time, to I'm big into creative writing. I have time to do that. I have time to work with the Archive, which is a literary magazine. I have time to, shoot for the Chronicle. Like, I never feel like the academics is like, a crushing weight or anything. I definitely feel like it's just a matter of time management. That's one of the skills that you'll learn pretty quickly at Duke. And there's resources too to help you figure out that balance freshman year. The Academic Resource Center helped me figure out how to schedule things when I first got here, and it's been pretty manageable since then.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I think a really important distinction to make is between like how much time some people say they're working and how much time you actually spend working. Like some people could go into the library at noon and come back out at 8 o'clock at night and be like, oh, I spent all day working. And it's like, you spent like 5 hours on Facebook and then you spent 3 hours reading.
You don't have to like live in Perkins and
yeah. So it's just like what you were saying, Audrey, about time management. And I think if you do manage your time well, there's a lot of time to have a great amount of fun at Duke and also a great amount of learning. And even there's a lot but the greatest part about Duke, I think, is the stuff that goes on. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things going on inside the classroom, but then there's a very huge amount of things that are really interesting going on outside the classroom in terms of like clubs or research, which hopefully we'll get to eventually, and service opportunities and things like that. And we wouldn't be able to maintain those things if students didn't have a lot of time outside their classes. Another question that we have is focus. How will this help with my intended major? And that's from A.O. Douglas. So I didn't actually participate in a focus program, but a lot of them are tailored to a specific major. Like there's something having to do with the mind, and that's definitely for the neuroscience major, or there's one having to do with freedom, and that's a public policy major. So depending on what your major is and what your focus program is, it allows you to take a much more detailed, kind of like skip the intro level classes and go and get a much more personal relationship with a professor, because you'll take 2 classes, each with the same group of students, and they'll also be in your dorm. And then you'll have dinners with the professor that you'll be taking those classes with. So you'll form relationships really quickly with the people that you're taking these classes with, be able to have really deep discussions about the subject matter that you're learning. And I think that'll really help you get acquainted with your major and get passionate about your major, even before you have time to really get in depth in terms of the subject matter academically. So I think if you already know what you want to major in, it could be a really useful thing to apply to a focus program that will relate to what your subject matter is. Audrey, did you do a focus program?
Didn't, but a lot of my friends did. And one thing that I noticed just from being around them is that focus tends to approach things from a more interdisciplinary perspective. And so even if you don't know exactly what you want to do as a major before you come here, if you have like an interest that you're leaning toward, I think focus will help you approach that interest from a lot of different perspectives, and that might lead you to what you decide to major in later on. So I highly recommend it to anybody who's thinking about doing it, because all the friends I had who did it loved it.
Yeah. And focus classes will fill certain class requirements within like the areas of learning or modes of inquiry. Those are something that called Trinity requirements. So if you do choose to come to Duke, they're really not something that you have to worry about too much. If you just kind of take classes that you're interested in or fulfill your major, a lot of times you'll end up knocking most of them out without even trying. But focus classes will fit some of those requirements without you even trying to make it work. I would just say if there's a focus program that it looks like it might be interesting to you, I would definitely encourage you to apply. Another question was, Duke is very rigorous when it comes to academics. What is the average GPA of students, especially science students, at the university? I'm not exactly sure what the average GPA of students is by department, but I do know that Trinity and Pratt, so the engineering school and the School of Arts and Sciences, puts out average GPA stats every year. I could be wrong, and I don't want to lead anybody astray. You could find this on the internet, I'm pretty sure, but I think the average GPA for Pratt students was 3.4, and the average GPA for Trinity students was 3.6. Now, with that being said, the average GPA of students at another school might be higher, but when you're applying for a job or applying for grad school, Duke's name does have a lot of recognition and a lot of weight to it, which might compensate for a lower or a higher GPA. GPA sometimes just comes down to being a number, and I say that with someone who has quite a low GPA. So we'll see how that all works out. Audrey, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I would just add, like, I'm in the humanities. Most of my friends are either engineers or are in the natural sciences, and I would just stress, like, not to, like, psych yourself out about getting to college and trying to, like, have maybe the same attitude towards your GPA that you might have had in high school. Like, it's a big adjustment, but there's no, at least in my experience and from my friends' experiences, there's no reason that, like, your GPA should necessarily, like, limit you in terms of there's no reason that deciding to go into sciences or, like, choosing something that you really love to do should necessarily limit you to having a bad GPA just by its department. Like, I think that if there are strategies and there's people to help you in terms of keeping up with the workload, and so I wouldn't let that scare you. It's definitely something that's a very individual thing, and everyone kind of figures it out for themselves. But yeah, I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, I mean, Duke students, when they graduate, go on to do great things. I would judge the school by that, not necessarily by the average GPA of our students. And I think the success of our students after graduation is much more important than some number that's assigned to us. Someone asked about Program 2, which I think is something that is one of Duke's huge strengths. And a lot of my friends are in Program 2. My girlfriend is actually doing Program 2, and it's a fantastic program. If I wasn't an engineer, I think I would have tried to do Program 2. And what Program 2 is it's a program that Duke has where you can pretty much design your own major. So you will look at all the classes that Duke has to offer and pick out a bunch of different classes that you want to take while you're at Duke, put them together into a course of study, and then justify, looking at all the majors that Duke has already, why you think you should have a different major that we don't offer, and explain the merits of that program, how academically rigorous it would be, what it would offer you, what it would offer the world, and how those classes would contribute to the creation of that major and your understanding of the subject. And it'll go through a couple of different committees, and once it gets approved, you'll get assigned an academic advisor under a certain program that they think matches most closely. And then once it's all approved, you'll have pretty much a self-made major. So even if Duke doesn't necessarily have the program that you're looking for, a lot of times you can kind of work with Duke to make it happen. So like we have a lot of students up until now were making Program 2 majors in global health. Now Duke has a major. It recently made a new major in global health, so students won't need to make their own anymore. But students would come here and see that we had a lot of great courses that related to global health, but no major that actually would allow them to study that in depth. So they would make a course of study that allowed them to study issues relating to maternal and child health, social inequities, wealth disparity, education, cultural anthropology, diseases, things like that, and then put it all together and apply a focus to it. And then they would be able to get an academic advisor from the Institute of Global Health and be able to graduate with a self-designed major that is really impressive. And I'd say it's one of the best things about Duke. Audrey, do you have any experiences with Program 2?
Yeah, I have a bunch of friends that are doing sort of more bioethics focused Program 2s, and it's like just like you said, the ability to kind of take sort of certain like lenses and apply them to certain fields of study. So like because just being a biology major for a lot of my friends, like it didn't have the same sort of kind of philosophical, ethical dimension that they wanted, and they were able to create that and have advisors, and it's really enriched their Duke experience. I completely agree with exactly what you said.
Yeah. So we've gotten a couple of questions about professors and how they teach at Duke, how accessible they are. So we can kind of just lump those in all together, and I'm going to tell you right now that there isn't exactly one type of professor at Duke. We have some professors that teach, rather large classes, and then we have some other, the largest class that I've ever taken at Duke was somewhere around 300 students, and that's very unusual. Usually they're much smaller, but the smallest class that I've taken at Duke was 2 students. That's also very unusual. But it's really hard to iron down or nail down what the typical Duke professor is like, because just like Duke students, they come from a very wide variety of walks of life, and Duke is looking for a really diversity of thought when they're assembling their faculty and their student body. But just to get some facts and figures out there, 90% of classes are 30 students or under, and we have an 8-to-1 student to faculty ratio, which means that most of the time you will be having a lot of face-to-face interaction with your faculty. You'll be getting to get to know them very well. I've had dinner with my professors a lot of times. I'm having a meeting with my professor, not the same professor, but with a professor pretty much every day of the week, just one-on-one. I guess the best way to get across how faculty-student relationships work is to just tell you guys a little bit about the relationships that I have with my professors. So over the past summer and winter break and then next summer, I've been working with one faculty member. His name's Dr. Charles Pio. He's in the Department of Culture and Anthropology. And I've traveled with him to his fieldwork site where he studies the Cabre people of northern Togo. And so I was doing some international development work there, and he was helping me get an idea of the cultural, historical, economic context that my project would exist in. So I took an independent study, and what that is it's a class that you and a professor work together to design. So you go to a professor that you're interested in, and you ask them if they'd be willing to take you on as an independent study student. So you'll fill out a form and a course of study, and you'll design it together. And over the next semester, you'll get to work just with that professor and maybe a couple other students if they're interested on pretty much a self-designed course. And you can get credit for it under that department. You can get different credits for it for your requirements. So yeah, it's a really just a lot of freedom within the academic world at Duke. And Charlie and I, it's a little weird. Before I went to Togo, I wasn't really sure how to address him because all the students call him Charlie, but I wasn't sure if I should call him, Professor Pio, Dr. Pio, Dr. P. He signed his emails C. I don't know, but Charlie. Now, whenever I go to Togo, I end up just like staying at his house, crashed on his couch a couple times. But you end up making really great relationships with your professors as long as you make the effort to get to know them. And it can be a great experience because they have such wonderful experiences. I mean, they have to be at an institution as great as Duke. So it's a lot of wonderful things to learn from them, both inside and outside of the classroom. And the opportunity that we have to get to know them outside the classroom, because we have such a low student to faculty ratio, means that we get to have these interactions with them, which I think is a great strength of the school.
Yeah, I would add to that. I can attest to how low the student-faculty ratio is. I think last semester my smallest class had 5 people, and my biggest class had, I think, maybe it was almost 20. And that's one of the things that I really liked about Duke, was that when I visited and then also when I came here, I was able to have a really tight-knit learning experience, and it really, you get a lot of individual attention. And then also when it comes to making friends and kind of making mentors out of your professors, there's a lot of ways that Duke facilitates that. there's like, you can take your professor out to lunch for free. The university will pay for you to have like a lunch with your professor, you and some friends and from their class, or just you and the professor one-on-one. And that's just sort of a way to kind of facilitate discussion. Professors are, so some of them are living in the dorms with you. If you're in the focus program, you have that increased accessibility to professors. And even if you aren't using one of these kind of institutional ways of connecting with the professor, like, I can't emphasize enough that your professors at Duke are kind of like, they're waiting for you to take advantage of their being there. They have office hours, their doors are always open, and they're waiting to hear from students. And I've like always, every time I've ever reached out to a teacher at Duke, it's been really rewarding. And if you ask for help or if you ask for guidance, they'll give it.
Yeah, and you mentioned this, but Duke has a program called the Faculty in Residence Program, which means that in your freshman dorm, you'll actually have, in your freshman, and maybe, I've never lived on West Campus. I moved right down to the Central Campus, but I think on East Campus and on where all the freshmen live together, and on West Campus, you'll have faculty living with the students. So they're not living in a dorm room. They actually have an apartment that's built into the dorm with a kitchen and living room and all that kind of stuff. So you'll get really close with the faculty that live in your dorm, and you'll get to form a great relationship with them. So I actually, when I was a freshman, I lived in a dorm with a professor who ended up being my fluid mechanics professor last semester, which was really nice because it was a really hard class, but I ended up already having a relationship with him where I could go to help with him, and ask him for help all the time. And whenever I went over to ask for help, it was just going back to my old dorm. But someone also asked the percent of class taught by TAs. And so we said earlier that 90% of the classes are under 30 people. And so the 90% of classes are also taught by faculty. And so what that means is when there's a huge class, you're also going to have those classes broken into smaller classes later. So you'll have a really large lecture and then a smaller, they're either called discussion sections or recitation sections. And so you'll have a large class that's taught by a professor. And that could be, somewhere over 30. And then you'll have smaller that are somewhere around 20 students, and those are led by a TA. And these TAs are really intelligent graduate students who, they're not professors, but they're geniuses. So they're there to help you. The professor is also right there. The TAs are just somewhere so that the professor doesn't get overwhelmed, because there are, over 30 students in the class. They're sort of a stopgap measure to make sure that things don't get too crazy for that professor. But they can handle pretty much anything you throw at them. They know the stuff really well. And 90% of the classes are taught by the faculty. So if you do deal with a TA, a lot of times it's just a supplemental thing where they'll either be helping the professor grade things, they'll be in the back of the class answering questions. If you don't want to go to the professor with a question because maybe you're a freshman and you're nervous and you don't want to go to this guy who's published 3 books and that kind of stuff. Audrey, have you ever had like a really good experience with the TA or anything like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of my English classes last semester, sophomore year.
We're getting old.
Yeah, wow. Was taught by this absolutely fantastic graduate student. And it was, sometimes it's after taking a lot of classes with a professor, like I wouldn't shy away from necessarily having classes with graduate students, because that's like sometimes a little more of a maybe a little bit more of a collegial environment, in that like it's someone who is also is kind of formulating ideas and like is kind of really interested in leveling more, but also like you're going to have the support of like a full professor, usually, like in my field, like you're never going to be taught usually by just a graduate student. There's going to be they'll have the full support of the department behind them in some way. So I wouldn't worry about not getting the full experience, because you definitely will.
Yeah, definitely. So we've also had a bunch of questions about advisors, how much guidance you get, and how do you pick a major and how you pick your classes. So right now, we're actually picking our classes for next semester. At least the upperclassmen are. You guys who just got in, you don't need to worry about that yet. You'll be doing that over the summer. And you won't need to worry about picking your major until right before spring break of your sophomore year. So we have a lot of time to explore. I know a lot of you probably already know what you want to do, but you could end up changing your mind. And if you come to Duke, that's probably not going to be a problem. I ended up picking Duke because of its public policy and its economics department. And then when I got here, I ended up deciding that I actually wanted to be an engineer. And if I'd gone to another school, I would have had to transfer. But because Duke has such a great department in both of those things, I was fine. And I could just fill out a simple form and get accepted to Duke twice, which was pretty nice. I have a pretty great advisor. I have a bunch of classes with him. I can pretty much walk into his office whenever I want. Really, since I've had so many classes with him, and because he's been my advisor for so long, I feel like we have a really great relationship, and so I can ask him about pretty much anything. He's helping me on one of my projects that I'm having right now. So I'll go into a meeting with him and I'll ask him, should I take this statistics class or should I take this statistics class? And by the way, should I use this epoxy or that sealant? I'm not really sure. And there's just so many resources for, there's the Career Center for career advising, and then there's graduate school advising for whatever, if you're in pre-law, if you're pre-med, if you're pre-anything. We have an advising center for it. Then there's advising for your major, and then there's, tons of people who are just in the classes above you who are probably just dying to talk to you about all the mistakes that they made that they don't want you to make. So they'd love to sit down and get a coffee with you and talk you through it. So there's tons of guidance just waiting for you. Ooh, that's a loaded question. Sorry, we just got a new one.
Yeah.
Audrey, do you have any? You probably have a different experience with advising than I, just because your advisors are different.
Yeah. Well, I had a degree of choice in my advisors, both for the English department and the political science department. And I was able to choose my advisor more or less based on where our kind of research interests converge, which was really fantastic because I know then that when I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what I'm going to write my thesis about, I'm going to my advisor and then picking my classes, and he can say, well, there's classes that are offered in the past that really help students formulate these ideas, and so that's really excellent. And then also there's just no shortage of advisors when it comes to other academic positions too. Like I had a global education advisor helping me figure out what classes I should take while I'm in Paris. You have a really great network. There's also pre-major advising through freshman year, beginning of sophomore year to help you decide what you do want to study. It's a big thing to think about for a lot of people, and being undecided shouldn't scare you because Duke has a network specifically to help you go from undecided to declared.
So we have one question, which is engineering/science at Duke stronger than business/pre-law? Which is a bit of a strange question.
So you're engineering and I'm pre-law. So
I would say that you really can't. You might be able to judge there's rankings for our departments nationally. And so I know that we have either the number 2 or the number 3 BME program in the country. But we don't actually have a business major. We have a markets and management certificate, which is somewhere between a minor and a major. I have a statistic here. 98% of Duke alums are successful with law applications. Pretty much Duke is great, and if you're interested in engineering and science, then you should go into engineering and science. And if you're interested in business or pre-law, then you should go into business or pre-law. I'm going to tell you right now, they're very different. Try both of them out, but chances are that you're going to go one way or the other. And if you pick one because you think that it's stronger than the other one, then you're not going to be as happy as if you had gone with one because you're more interested in it than the other. Would you agree with that, Audrey?
I would just want to add, because this is like how I would have like advised myself when I was 18 trying to figure all this stuff out. I wouldn't focus so much on the next step after college when you're picking a college. I think that it's important to look at college in and of itself as an end, and to look at what's going to make you happiest in the 4 years that you're at Duke, not looking at Duke necessarily as just a stepping stone to someplace else. I mean, Duke will get you where you want to go. There's no doubt about that, but you might change your mind. Plenty of people come to Duke thinking they want to become a doctor and leave thinking that they want to become like a historian. Your college is a formative experience, and it'll change you in a lot of ways for the better. And I think you should leave yourself open to those ideas. Yeah, you might not end up wanting to go to law school, but if you do, Duke has a whole network to help you do that. And I mean, I've worked at Duke's law school. Like I'm preparing to go to law school. Like I don't have any worries about having an undergraduate degree from Duke and trying to get someplace excellent. And I'm sure it's the same thing with our excellent biomedical engineering program. I know plenty of people that are going to business school. I wouldn't worry at all about Duke getting you where you want to go, but I would focus more about enjoying Duke and taking advantage of what's offered at Duke while you're here when you're choosing a college.
Yeah. We kind of have a joke as upperclassmen when we meet freshmen during O week who are like, yeah, I'm pre-med. And we're like, yeah, sure you are. Or they're like, I'm pub-poly-econ. We're like, you're so unique. Like, you just got to college. There are so many opportunities at Duke, and they're all so fantastic. And there's really no point in limiting yourself as soon as you get here just because you heard about one program. And I would really encourage you to explore. Like, yes, some programs might have more notoriety than others, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be more successful in one or the other. The aggregate might be more successful as one or the other, but that doesn't mean you as an individual are going to be more successful as one or the other. So go where your passions lead you, and don't be afraid to explore. And earlier I talked about me exploring away from pre-law and towards engineering. And someone's asking, if you want to transfer to engineering, how difficult is the process? Is it possible to transfer if you realize you want to become an engineer later on in college? I went to the Dean of Engineering and I said, hi, I'd like to become an engineer. And they said, cool, have you taken any math or science classes? And I said, taken one comp sci class, and I took a couple of math and science APs. They had me fill out a form and take a math class and an engineering class that next semester. I passed both of them, which was good enough for them, and I got accepted in the engineering school that summer. So no, it's not that difficult. There's a lot of flexibility if you decide to change between schools. There are a lot more people switch out of the School of Engineering, but there are some who switch into the School of Engineering. But yeah, if you decide to switch, I would say think about it, because it's a lot more difficult to switch back once you've already switched into a school. But yeah, if you marked on your application that you want to go into Trinity, or you marked on your application that you want to be in Pratt, and once you get to Duke, you decide that you want to switch schools, it's really not a huge deal, and I wouldn't stress about it too much. Just go and talk to your academic advisor first. They'll tell you how to do it, and it'll be really, really easy. Before we go on, I want to welcome we have a third student who's joining us. His name is Shirag. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So can we bring? Can you get your audio on? I'm not sure how we.
Yeah, I think
You
I
want to
can
introduce
check now.
yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shirag. I am a senior at Duke, majoring in Chem and Bio and minoring in Chinese. So the question is, will we meet our advisors before we pick our freshman schedule? You will actually be able to email your advisors if you have any questions. They're actually really helpful about things like this. Because of logistical purposes, you actually have to register for classes before you get to Duke. But there's this thing where we have called add drop, where you can have 2 weeks to kind of go to classes and kind of feel things out and whether or not you want to take a particular class. And advisors will be there every step of the way to help you figure out what you want to take. And you're actually required to meet with your pre-major advisor before classes start. So they'll be able to help you out with that.
Yeah. So there's a question coming in saying, what would you suggest for finding an internship or otherwise getting involved in research? How soon can you get a research internship? Is it easy for freshmen to get internships? We actually have a program. I'm not actually sure what the official name is, but its purpose is specifically to get freshmen research internships. So my answer to that question would be, you can get an internship as soon as you want an internship. The program is to get freshmen in labs as soon as possible so they can get research experience. Duke is very much committed to having undergrads involved in the labs. We have so much research going on at Duke. We have the single largest interdisciplinary research building in the world on campus.
Yeah, so actually I've been also really heavily involved with research as well. I've worked in a lab for 3 years now. I'm actually going to be pursuing graduate school afterwards to continue my research. It was really, really easy to get involved with research. I basically just emailed a bunch of professors saying that I was really interested in what they were doing. And a lot of them replied to me right away and said sure. I actually didn't have to even send out a resume. So it was really, really easy. They tend to trust undergraduates a lot. And they want you to get, actually counterintuitively, they want you to get involved earlier in their labs. That way they can help you get more acquainted to the lab and get acquainted to whatever you're doing your research in. That way you have more experience as you go on throughout your years at Duke. So it's actually very, very easy to do so.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that research is definitely not limited at Duke just to the natural sciences. There's also great opportunities for research in social sciences as well, and in the humanities. The political science department in particular makes it really easy to research with them. Over the summer, there's like a program where you can help. One of the professors was writing a book last summer, and he was looking for research assistants. And so you get to work like really hands-on, and that's just really easy to get involved in. So if no matter what your interest might be, there's an opportunity to do research in it at Duke.
So Jason is asking, what advice would you give to incoming freshmen preparing to come to college over summer? So I would say that pretty much most people will not have a lot of concern for things that go on your resume before you got to college. So relax. You don't have a lot of stuff to do. And after you get to college, you're going to have, it's not going to be work all the time, but you're going to be going all the time. You're going to be having a ton of fun. You're going to be making a lot of new friends. You're going to be learning so many new things. But you might get homesick a little bit. It's going to be your last couple months at home. It's going to be your last couple months with your high school friends, with your family. And I would say enjoy it. I would also say definitely look into our pre-orientation programs. We have a lot of great programs to choose from. Project Build, Project Change, Project Waves, Project Wild. If I forget one, people are going to get really mad at me. But I think I got all of them.
There's P-Search also.
Project Search, which is, Project Search
for research.
Is about undergraduate research. Yeah, Project Search teaches you specifically, before you even become an undergraduate student, Um, it's a pre-orientation program. So what it is you get to campus before classes even start, before orientation week, um, and it's set up by Student Life to sort of introduce you to campus, introduce you to Durham, and introduce you to your freshman peers and upperclassmen to sort of acclimate you to Duke life before the craziness all starts. And each one of them has a different focus. And P-Search is the one that's specifically dedicated to introducing you to the research culture at this university. So if you're interested in research, then P-Search would be the one that you would want to look at. But also look at P-Build, because I did P-Build. And I'll be a crew leader. All right, we're getting a lot of questions about how AP credit works at Duke. So AP credit works differently depending on whether you're going into Pratt or Trinity. So I'll answer for Pratt, and then I'll let either Shirag or Audrey take for Trinity. So for Pratt, you can AP credit will always play in. There are certain cutoffs for what score will get your test considered, and only certain tests will be considered. So, for instance, I don't think statistics is considered for anything, or physics B. I don't think is considered for anything. But if you do get like a 5 on a test, then you will be able to get that either considered for placement or for credit. And for any of the natural sciences or math, pretty much anything engineering-y, you will be able to get credit for that in Pratt. But you'll only be able to get credit for 2 either social science or humanities AP tests within Pratt. But you'll be able to get placement for any test scores that qualify in the humanities or social sciences. But you should check the website. If you just Google Pratt Duke AP scores or AP tests, it'll answer most of your questions. Shirag or Audrey, do you want to take the Trinity side of things?
In my experience, in Trinity, it's mostly been for placement. It's been most useful for me for languages. Just in terms of skipping straight to the 100 level. And yeah, in the experience of people that I've talked to and my friends, it's mostly been for credit, getting out of the intro econ or the Calc 2 and going to the next level. And so that might shorten your path to a certain major, but it's not a class at Duke in and of itself, I guess.
Shirag, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the difference between Trinity and Pratt is the number of AP credits that you can use to apply towards graduation. But generally, students in Trinity use it to place out of certain classes, as Audrey mentioned. So, for instance, if you're a pre-med student, you can generally opt out of introductory chemistry if you have a 5, or you can take honors level chemistry if you have a 5 on the AP exam. So. Generally, people use it just to place out and kind of start at a little higher class level than they had taken in high school to be able to get a jump start in their classes and things. But that's about it.
I would definitely recommend taking a look at the website.
Yeah.
It's laid out a lot. You can just read it over a couple times because it does get a little bit confusing. If you just Google the words that you would use in formulating a question, it'll show up. So some people are asking, where should you start in picking a major? And I would say just think about you're going to be picking classes over the summer, and I would say just look at whatever classes still have space in them, and if you see one that's interesting to you, take it. And you've got a lot of time at Duke to figure out what you're interested in, and just take classes that you think look interesting. And might apply to what you think your major might be, and eventually you'll think that things that are more hard sciencey are more interesting to you, or things that have to do with gender studies are more interesting to you. And it'll start narrowing down, and you'll work your way to a major. Or maybe one night you'll just have an epiphany and be like, medieval studies, how could I not see it before now? How do you guys pick your majors?
One thing that I would say I loved about Duke is that you're generally confident that all the departments are pretty strong. So it's not like you're going to be choosing between a weak department and a strong department. You get to choose what you love. And I chose my major after changing it like 4 times. And I'm still graduating on time, so you definitely have the opportunity to take a whole breadth of classes to kind of see and be confident in what you want to major in. And I wouldn't really be worried about finding it too soon, because you definitely have the time to do it.
I would definitely just, excuse me, I would definitely just think about what you love. And honestly, like, Duke is going to give you a lot of room. Like, I mean, I'm able to complete, 2 majors, a minor. I have a French minor that I don't need. There's plenty of room in your schedule for you to explore, and so I would do that. And honestly, if the highlight of your time in high school was chem lab, then maybe you should be a chemistry major. But maybe you should also explore other things that are open to you. You don't have to decide right away. Just take a bundle of things that look interesting to you your first semester and go from there. I wouldn't stress about it.
Yeah, you have a lot of time to explore and take classes that aren't necessarily associated with your major. I mean, I'm an engineer with a calanth minor that happened kind of like Audrey's French minor, sort of by accident, who's also almost had a religion minor by accident too. You take a lot of classes that just happen because you're interested in the subject matter. It's also, if you do figure out pretty early on that you're interested in one thing or another, it's pretty easy to double major or double minor with one major across departments. Like, Shirag, you said that you're a Chem and Bio major, right?
Yeah, so I am a Chem and Bio major, and I took French also, and I realized my junior year that I really wanted to learn something different, so I decided to pick up Chinese, and I accidentally got a Chinese minor. So that's like not related to my majors at all. So I think that that's like a really cool thing about Duke, is that you have this flexibility and you can kind of change it. Even when as a junior, I was able to pick up a whole new language and an experience, and I got to go to China because of my interest in Chinese, and Duke helped me do that. So you can definitely do a whole breadth of different academic experiences.
And Audrey, you're an English and poli-sci double major?
Yes, English and poli-sci with a minor in Russian. Yeah. There's like no overlap between those 3 things, but I still had time to do them all. And Duke is really, I know some people that are double majoring. I wouldn't worry about balancing the course load because it's definitely doable. I think easily the majority of students are doing some more than just one major. They're doing a major and a minor, 2 majors, something like that, which is a testament to how easy it is and how flexible it is to do that at Duke. And it's also a great opportunity if you have interests that you don't think go together. Duke will let you do them both.
And there are even students who are double majoring between schools. So I know people who are double majors in BME and econ, or double majors in BME and history, and people who are double majoring within Pratt. So BME is biomedical engineering. So people who are biomedical engineering majors and also double majoring in mechanical engineering, or biomedical engineers and also a civil engineering major. We also have another question. It's kind of along the line of the AP credit question, which is, can you take classes at a local college before Duke for credit? And that's pretty complicated because it really depends on what college, what class, and what you're trying to get credit for. So I'm not sure we can answer that. If you, like I said, I would really recommend just sort of taking it easy this summer. It's the last summer that you've got to sort of just enjoy and relax. You'll have plenty of time to get everything out of the way that you need to get out of the way while you're at Duke. But if you really do want to take a class at a local college, that means that you should call if you want, you just call the department head at Duke and figure out that, call the department head of whatever class that you're trying to take and ask if taking a class at a college near you would be an acceptable alternative to whatever class you're trying to get out of. That's the most common way that I've heard. So like people living in Boston will take something at Boston University. One of my friends is taking math at Boston University instead of taking it at Duke, or someone was taking an evolutionary anthropology class at Tufts instead of at Duke. But, you know, it's summer for a reason. It's summer vacation. You just finished high school. Like, you've earned a break. Relax.
I could add that the summer before I came to Duke, I actually did that. I took an econ class for kicks, and I ended up getting elective econ credit for that. So just make sure you save all of your syllabi and everything, because it's a lot of paper. You have to make the content of the course readily available to the department heads and the registrar and everything like that. But it is possible that you'll get elective credit for that course. So if it's something you would want to do anyway, go for it. And it's possible, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah. We have a quick question. It's why is A minus at 3.7? Does that mean an A minus is common at Duke? We've got a pretty standard 4-point grading system. So an A or an A plus is 4.0, A minus 3.7, B plus 3.3, B is 3, and it sort of just goes down from there. You can look it up online. Pretty much anyone who uses a standard 4.0 grading system uses that exact same system. Yeah, like I said, don't stress too much about your GPA. Duke students are very successful in what they try to do, and it all works out. So just relax and come to Duke. We all do great things. So moving on, we have a question about what was your favorite or most interesting class that you've taken at Duke? Shirag or Audrey, do you want to take that one first?
I guess, kind of there's a nerdy answer to that, and then there's a non-nerdy answer to that. So within my major, my favorite class would have probably been physical chemistry. I really liked P-Chem. It was like physics and chemistry put together, and for me that was like amazing. And then outside of anything I've ever taken, I'm really interested in international politics. And right now I'm actually taking a class on Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And so I've gotten to get a really good, interesting perspective on that, and that has been one of my favorite classes at Duke for sure.
For me, probably one of my favorite classes I've taken at Duke in the poli-sci department was with a professor who has a joint appointment between the law school and the political science department. And it was a law and politics class, and it was just fascinating. And it was one of the best things about it is that you're taking this class from someone who's not only really knows the material, but helped kind of shape and invent the material, which is phenomenal. And so getting to take a law and politics class from someone who kind of sort of helped shape the legal movement was phenomenal. And honestly, everything I've ever taken in English department at Duke has been fantastic. The professors are so warm and understanding, and they're so like ready to listen to you and help you formulate your own ideas, that like the entire English department and law and politics are probably my favorite experiences academically at Duke.
For me, I would say that it's a tie right now between an engineering class that I'm taking called Sustainable Engineering in the Global Community. And it's taught by the faculty sponsor for Engineers Without Borders, who's also my thesis advisor, who's also my academic advisor. And the whole point is to try and get engineers to think about sort of the economic and social context that they'll be designing things to exist in before they actually go and build these things in those contexts. So we track how much we eat in a week, and then try and eat the only amount, strictly the number of calories that we need to survive for a week. And then we track the amount of waste that we generate in a week, and then try and only generate the amount of waste that someone living in a very low resource area that would generate. Right now, I am not allowed to use electricity in my dorm room from the grid. When I go and take a shower, I have to use a battery-powered lantern. I'm not allowed to use my laptop. I have to go into the library and use it. And it's a really interesting class that sort of just gets you to think about what it would be like living in a low resource area instead of someplace as great as Duke or the United States. And then another class that I'm taking is called Development in Africa. And what it does is it takes a look at the international development apparatus, like the UN, the World Health Organization, USAID, and all the projects that they've tried over the past 60 years. And the fact that over 90% of them have failed, and looked at the reasons for why development is not working, and tries to look for a better way to sort of reach the goals that we're trying to implement. So they're both really interesting classes that I think are really applicable, because last summer I tried to do a development project, and next summer I'm doing a development project, both of which hopefully will be successful, which you can read about on the admissions blog, blogs.admissions.edu, if you guys are interested. But moving on, we have a question about the summer and internship opportunities that we've had. And so Shirag or Audrey, do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, go ahead, Audrey.
Okay. So in terms of summer, for me it's been a mix of working and studying abroad. So last summer I went to Russia and spent most of the summer there, learning intensive Russian, mostly, though I did know someone who actually was able to combine the classwork in Russian and also had an internship at a bank at the same time, which was pretty fantastic for him. And then there's also a lot of actual summer programs that are through Duke for Duke credit in foreign countries where they have like an internship component. Like I know that a lot of people who went to Geneva, Switzerland, did internships there. There's also like a Duke in New York program that's domestic that has an internship component as part of it, and like they'll help you find an internship, situate you in New York. You take a Duke class, and then you have an internship as part of that. Mostly it's been me like working in Durham, like doing a lot of like video editing stuff. That's one of my hobbies. But Duke has great resources for like no matter what you're interested in. There's career fairs that come several times a year. People that are looking to hire Duke students in the area and also around the country. So I've never felt any shortage of opportunities for summer work, and also research. All of my friends have in the natural sciences had an opportunity to do that as well, but I'm sure Josh can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, it's been a mix of two major things, mostly research, and I was actually able to go on a Duke Engage trip as well. So Duke Engage is the community-based project that Duke offers all of its students. I'm pretty sure a lot of applicants have heard about this, but I was able to go to China last summer, actually, and teach dance. I'm on a dance team here at Duke. So I was able to go teach dance in English. So that was one opportunity I had to kind of branch out. And then in terms of the other types of internships I had, I was here at Duke doing research in my own lab. So the great thing that Duke offered me was the opportunity to stay here at Duke for free and actually be paid for my research, which is really unique, I think, in terms of the university environment. Duke was able to offer me grants to be able to stay here and be able to have living costs of my research covered as well. The career fair was really helpful in that because I was able to show my resume to them, and they were able to help me work through it. And then what they also offered was if you were not able to receive a grant, or if you wanted to do an internship that didn't necessarily offer you the money, but you still wanted to pursue it for free, what Duke would be able to do is be able to pay you through the career fair for this opportunity. So what I felt that was really great about Duke was that they offer you the ability to do what you want, and that money shouldn't be a limitation in that. And that was really helpful in being able to pursue what I wanted to do at Duke.
Yeah. The summer after my freshman year, I actually went to a community college back home and got my EMT certification. And then the last summer after my sophomore year, I was doing a Duke Engage independent project, which means that Duke Engage fully funded a project that I designed myself with the support of a faculty member to go and build a solar-powered computer center connected to the internet through a local cell phone network in northern Togo. And then next summer, I'll be going back to that same community and implement some research that I'm doing in a civil and environmental engineering research lab right now, which is going to generate electricity from human urine and feces. So it's a sanitation and energy project that will hopefully be able to generate jobs for the community that I'm working in. And that will be through a program called the Pratt National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenge Scholars. So a lot of great opportunities for both research internships and summer opportunities at Duke, all of which there are a lot of resources to help you cover the expenses for. We have a question more about just like the culture at Duke, which is, are other students helpful and supportive, or is it more of a competitive environment where it sometimes feels kind of cutthroat?
I mean, I'll just go ahead and say that I've never felt like that Duke was like a pressure cooker of competitiveness and where I'm like clawing over other people to get good grades. I feel like everyone's generally feels like they're in it together. Even my friends who are like, taking really rigorous, really rigorous majors or like things that are, that, maybe people might think are stereotypically like, oh, we're grading on a curve. Like we're all trying to get through college together, and I think people at Duke are too busy loving Duke to worry about competing with each other. We're all just trying to enjoy the experience, I think.
I think something that, as a pre-med student, something that I was really concerned about as well was like if people were supportive or cutthroat at all. One thing I realized going through Duke was that this is an incredibly supportive place. Before final exams or before exams in general, people would email out to the entire class study guides that they built. And they had spent all this time doing it, and they were just willing to give it out to their classmates, and that was incredibly helpful. Sometimes their study guides were so much better than mine that I would just not even use mine. And then another great thing is there's this place in our library called The Link, and basically what it is, it's all these study rooms where groups of people are meant to congregate and work together. And you'll see like all the walls are covered in whiteboard, and you'll see people working together in groups, kind of building reactions all over the walls, and everyone's working together and working through problems. And that location is actually built for collaboration. Everything is able to move. The chairs and tables are built so that you can move them to whatever location you need so that everyone can work together. And I just really felt that really reinforced the collaborative, supportive environment here.
Yeah, I would say that the harder the class, probably the more collaboration you would have between students. And that's definitely been true the entire time that I've gone through Duke. We have two more questions, and we're actually a little bit over time, so we should probably keep it kind of short. But the first one is, what are the best and worst things about Duke? And I've gotten a note from our admissions department that we are free to be as honest as we want.
Okay.
So Audrey, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Best thing about Duke, tie between, so cliche, the teachers and the people. It's fantastic. The worst thing about Duke, honestly, God, it's only 4 years. I love being in Paris and I love being here, but like being away from Duke is like something, I don't know, I adore it. I'm horrified about the idea of graduating, to be honest, and that's my least favorite thing, I guess.
I think my favorite thing about Duke, what Audrey already said, the people. I think one thing having gone through here for 4 years is that this is a place that definitely allows you to do what you want. And it's a place that gets you to where you want to go in your future, and I really feel really strongly about that. And I think the thing I hate the most about Duke, I'm really bad at trying to catch the bus sometimes, and catching, and I always miss the bus. And for some reason, yeah, and that just causes problems of me like getting places. But it's probably the bus.
For those of you who haven't visited campus, East and West campuses are separated by a mile and a half, and there's a bus that goes back and forth about every 5 minutes. But that 5 minutes can make you pretty late sometimes. I would say my favorite thing about Duke is that you can see anyone on campus and just know that they are doing something incredible with their time at Duke, and they're going to do something incredible with their lives. And you can strike up a conversation with anybody, and everyone here is fascinating. But my least favorite thing about Duke is sometimes it can feel like you just don't have downtime because you're almost always missing out on something. If you stay in on one night, you're missing a party. If you get sick and miss a lecture, then you just miss the guest speaker of the year. Like, sometimes it's just hard to keep up with everything that's happening on campus. And our second question, and this is actually our last question, if you were a high school senior, would you pick Duke again?
Yeah, I think I thought I would like eventually maybe be less in love with Duke. People tell you when you visit, like, I mean, it's really beautiful and really fantastic, but like, oh, like, you won't even notice, and that's not true. Like 4 years later, and it's like I still notice every day how lucky I am to be going to Duke, and I would absolutely pick it again.
I'll walk outside and I'll see like our campus, and hands down, best decision of my life.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Sometimes I just walk outside after a class and it'll just hit me again, like how beautiful this place is and how amazing everything here is. And it sounds like we're being really canned and like really fake, but I promise we're not.
We promise.
I would definitely pick Duke over everything all over again. So unfortunately, we're out of time. I just want to do a quick reminder and a quick plug for Blue Devil Days. In case just the three of us weren't enough to give you a peek about what Duke is all about, then you should come to Duke and see it for yourself and get tours and be able to talk to students, be able to talk to professors. And those days where you can come and do all of that and see wonderful programs that give you a really great look at what our school is all about are April 8th through 9th, 18th through 19th, and 21st through 22nd. So check out the website admissions.duke.edu for more information on what those days are all about. And our next hangout will be on Saturday, noon Eastern time, and that will be about athletics, clubs, and activities. So I really encourage you guys to check it out. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, and I really hope you guys picked Duke. It was the best place I ever made. Good night, everyone.
Bye.